Have you ever wondered why bad things happen to good people? Why is it that good people often face hard storms, while the wicked seem to live in gold-covered palaces? Why does it sometimes feel like God is silent during the moments we need Him most? These are not new questions. They are the same questions that are found in the oldest story in the Bible. There lived a man named Job, not a king, not a prophet, but a man who was so good that even the heavens noticed him. He was known as the most honest person the earth had ever seen. But being good didn't save him from trouble, and that makes his story important for all of us. What if, one day, without warning, everything you loved was taken away? Imagine your children gone, your home destroyed, your money stolen, your health broken until every breath hurts. What if the very people meant to comfort you judged you instead? And what if, in the middle of that darkness, God Himself said nothing? Would you still trust Him? This is the journey of a soul that breaks but refuses to give up. This is the story of how hope can rise from the ashes of the greatest test ever told. If you would like to see more of these kinds of stories, please like and subscribe. It means the world to us. Now, let's begin. Our story begins in the land of Uz, a place of big sand dunes and rocky ground. It was a tough land, where wealth was measured in life, not just coin. There once lived a man named Job in the land of Uz. He was blameless and upright, a man who feared God and stayed away from evil. Job wasn't a king, but everyone looked up to him. He lived with deep respect for God, avoiding anything that looked like trouble. But Job wasn't just known for being good. He was known for his immense wealth. His fortune was vast. He had 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 donkeys in his pastures. He had a big house full of servants to take care of everything. Yet if you asked Job what he loved most, he wouldn't point to his gold or his animals. He would point to his family. He was the proud father of 10 children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. They were a close family. They constantly met in their homes for feasts to celebrate the life God had given them. One morning, as the sun came up, Job stood by the altar he had built. He looked serious as he spoke to his wife.
The days of feasting are done. We must be careful.
You worry too much, my husband. Our children are good kids. They are just happy.
Happiness is a gift, but the heart is weak. Maybe my children have sinned.
Maybe they cursed God in their hearts without meaning to. We must pray for them.
Even with all this joy, Job had this secret worry. Every single morning, after his children had finished their celebrations, Job was already awake to offer sacrifices. Job knew that even when things look perfect on the outside, the heart can wander. He prayed for them all the time because he loved his family and he loved God. He lived in this peaceful way, never guessing that in heaven a shadow was about to fall across his name. While Job was praying in the early morning, the scene shifted to a place far away from human eyes. The angels came to present themselves before the Lord, but among them a cold shadow walked in with confidence. It was Satan, the wanderer, the accuser. He never rests from his search for a soul to break. He came to the meeting not to worship, but to challenge. The Lord's voice spoke with mighty power.
He revealed,
"Where have you come from?"
Satan did not fear the question. He answered with a sly tone.
"From roaming the earth. I have walked back and forth across it. I have watched kings rise and fall, and I have seen men sell their honor for a little comfort."
But the Lord knew of one heart that remained steady.
"Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil."
Satan's eyes burned with a dark challenge. He knew Job's record, but he questioned Job's motives. He stepped forward to make his accusation.
Does Job fear God for nothing? You have put a wall of protection around him. You guard his home, his family, and his wealth. You have blessed the work of his hands, and his herds are spread throughout the land.
Satan's argument was sharp. He claimed that Job only served God because of the rewards. In Satan's mind, no one worships God simply for who he is. They only worship for the benefits.
But stretch out your hand, strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face.
This was the ultimate question. Is Job's faith a sincere love, or does he only love you for what you give him? Satan claimed that if you take away the blessings and the comfort, Job's faith would vanish. God decided to allow the test to proceed to prove Job's heart. God knew Job's faith was real.
Very well. Everything he has is in your power, but do not lay a finger on the man himself.
With that permission, Satan vanished like a puff of smoke. The wall of protection was removed, and Job's fate was sealed for the most brutal test any man had ever faced. The next day in Uz began peacefully. Job's 10 children were gathered at their oldest brother's house for a feast. In the fields, the oxen were plowing, and the donkeys were grazing nearby. But suddenly, that peace was shattered. A servant ran into Job's home, his face pale with terror. He fell at Job's feet, gasping for air.
Master! The Sabaeans attacked! They stole the oxen and the donkeys!
They killed the servants with swords. I am the only one who escaped to tell you.
Job stood frozen. The Sabaeans were ruthless. But before he could even process the loss, the door flew open again. A second messenger ran in, shaking and smelling of smoke.
Master, the fire of God fell from the sky. It burned up the sheep and the shepherds. Nothing is left. I am the only one who escaped to tell you.
Job could barely breathe. Fire from the sky? Was heaven attacking him? But the bad news was not done. A third messenger stumbled in, blood staining his tunic.
The Chaldeans. They formed 3 raiding parties and attacked your camels. They stole them all and killed the servants. I am the only one who escaped to tell you.
In a matter of minutes, Job lost everything. His wealth, his work, and his security were gone. The greatest man in the East was now penniless. But the worst blow was yet to come. A fourth messenger entered. He couldn't speak at first, looking at Job with eyes full of tears.
Sir, your children, they were eating together at the oldest brother's house. A mighty wind roared from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. The roof collapsed on them. They are all dead. I alone escaped to tell you.
The room fell silent. Job felt the ground shift beneath his feet. In a single moment, he lost everything. His possessions, his family, his future. The pain settled on his chest like a crushing weight. Job stood up, tore his robe, and shaved his head in deep grief. Job's world had completely collapsed. In this moment of absolute darkness, Job did something that stunned the accuser. Instead of shouting in anger, he fell to the ground in worship. Job looked up from the dust, tears streaming down his face, and whispered his conviction.
Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
In all this, Job did not sin. He did not blame God, but he surrendered. He knew that everything he possessed was a gift from God. He held on to his faith even when his heart was broken. It is easy to praise God when we have everything, but Job praised him when he had nothing. If you want to trust God even when life gets hard, comment, "I choose praise," below. Satan's first plan had failed. Job's house was ruined and his children were gone, but Job still worshipped God. But Satan was not done. Once again, the angels gathered, and the Lord spoke to Satan. God repeated the same question he asked before, proving that Job's heart had not changed.
Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He still holds on to his integrity, even though you incited me to ruin him for no reason.
Satan looked angry. He stepped forward with a new, colder challenge.
Skin for skin. A man will give everything to save his life. But stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face.
The challenge had changed. It wasn't about Job's possessions anymore. It was about his body. Satan believed that physical pain would break what grief could not. God agreed to the second test.
Very well, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life.
Satan went down to earth with a terrifying mission. In a few hours, Job was struck with a terrible sickness. Painful sores broke out all over his body, from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He walked to the edge of the city where people threw trash. He sat there in the ashes. He took a piece of broken pottery to scratch his sores because the pain was unbearable. While he sat there, his wife came to him. She had watched him lose everything. She saw their wealth disappear. She saw their children buried. Now, seeing her husband rotting away in the dirt, her heart finally shattered.
Are you still trying to hold on? Look at us, Job! Look at your skin! God has abandoned us. Curse God and die.
Job looked at her. He wasn't mad, he was just sad and determined. He refused to let the pain change his mind about God.
You are talking like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from God and not accept trouble?
In all this, Job did not sin in what he said. The bad news about Job spread everywhere. 3 of his old friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, heard about it. They were shocked. They met up and decided to go see him. Their goal was good. They wanted to cry with their friend and comfort him. They remembered Job as a strong man. He was smart and respected. They expected to find him sad in his house, maybe with a few servants left. But as they got close to the city, they stopped. They saw someone sitting in the trash heap, but they didn't know who it was. This wasn't the great man they knew. This was a broken body covered in sores and gray dust. When they realized it was Job, they broke down. They started crying loudly. They tore their clothes and threw dust over their heads toward the sky. This was an old way of showing deep sadness. Then they did something amazing. They didn't start talking. They didn't ask questions. They just sat down in the dirt with him. They sat for 7 whole days because they saw that his pain was too big for words. For 7 days and 7 nights, no one said a word. But finally, the silence had to break. Job opened his mouth. He didn't curse God. Instead, he cursed the day he was born.
Let the day I was born disappear! Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Had I died at birth, I would now be at peace. I would be asleep and at rest.
To Job, Even being born felt like a mistake. The silence was over. Now the arguments were about to start. The mood in the ash heap changed fast. It went from quiet sadness to sharp anger. Job's friends had traveled far to help him, but his refusal to admit guilt made them furious. They believed in a rigid rule. God rewards the good and punishes the bad. To them, Job's suffering was clear proof of a secret sin. Eliphaz, the oldest, spoke first. He looked at Job with disappointment.
Job, think. Does God ever destroy innocent people? I have seen that those who plow evil and plant trouble are the ones who harvest it.
Eliphaz leaned in close, urging Job to confess.
If I were you, I would appeal to God. Do not hate God's correction. He makes wounds, but he also bandages them.
Job looked at Eliphaz, feeling deeply betrayed.
If my sadness was weighed on a scale, it would be heavier than all the sand in the sea.
You see how scary my life is, and you are afraid. I only wish God would crush me and let me die.
Then Bildad spoke up. He believed God is always fair, so Job's children must have died for a reason. His voice was harsher.
How long will you speak like this? Your words are like a strong wind. Does God ever twist justice?
Bildad pointed a finger at Job with a cold accusation.
If your children sinned against him, he gave them what they deserved. But if you were truly pure, he would rise up right now and restore you.
Bildad's logic was cruel. In his eyes, God's silence was proof of Job's guilt. The debate grew furious. Zophar, the third friend, was the most brutal of all. He mocked Job, telling him that his long speeches were just empty noise.
Do you think all this talking makes you right? Know this, God is actually punishing you less than you deserve.
The friends were convinced they knew the cause of the disaster. They believed Job was hiding a dark secret because they couldn't accept that bad things happened to innocent people. Job refused to accept their lies. He shouted back, defending his integrity.
You smear me with lies. You are worthless physicians, all of you. Tell me, what did I do wrong? Show me my sin.
Job was broken, but his spirit was defiant. He stood up in the ashes and made a promise that echoes through history.
Though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face.
He looked past his pain and declared a hope that defied all logic.
I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth.
Job was done arguing with men. He turned his face away from his friends and looked at the dark clouds gathering on the horizon. He was ready for the king to answer.
Oh, that I had someone to hear me! I sign now my defense. Let the Almighty answer me.
Job had asked for a trial. He had asked God to show up and explain himself. And suddenly, God did. But he didn't come with a gentle whisper. He spoke from the heart of a whirlwind. The sky turned black. Out of the spinning storm, the voice of the Lord thundered.
Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me.
God took Job on a tour of the universe. He showed Job that the world is wilder and more complex than any human can understand.
Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know.
God pointed to the stars, the seas, and the storehouses of the snow. He spoke of the mountain goats and the wild donkeys that run free. He described creatures so terrifying that no man could tame them.
Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you. It feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins.
God then pointed to the dragon of the sea, Leviathan.
Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook? If you lay a hand on him, you will remember the struggle and never do it again.
Job realized his mistake. He had been judging the architect of the universe with a limited human mind. Job was humbled. He realized he had spoken about things he didn't understand.
I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more.
Job fell to the ground. He didn't ask why anymore. He had seen God, and that was enough.
My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes.
Job was humbled, but the story wasn't over. God's anger burned against the friends because they had misrepresented him. God turned his attention to Eliphaz, the leader of the group.
I am angry with you and your two friends because you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has.
God commanded them to offer a large sacrifice, but he set one condition. They needed Job, the man they had judged, to stand between them and God.
Go to my servant Job and offer a burnt offering. My servant Job will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer.
Even though his friends had accused him and added to his pain, Job prayed for them, and God accepted Job's prayer. Then the tide turned. It started with forgiveness. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. The restoration began with his community. All his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came to his house. They ate with him, comforted him, and each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold ring. The loneliness was finally over. Over time, the Lord blessed the second half of Job's life more than the first. The single coin from his friends multiplied into a vast fortune. He eventually owned 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys, exactly double what he lost. God also gave him 7 sons and 3 daughters. In all the land, no women were as beautiful as Job's daughters, and he gave them an inheritance alongside their brothers. Job's restoration was complete. The Bible says Job lived 140 years and saw 4 generations of his descendants. Job died as an old man, full of days. He had walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and he came out the other side, not because he was perfect, but because he trusted the one who is. The story of Job is not just about suffering. It is about the question Satan asked at the very beginning. Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan believed that faith was a business deal, that we only love God when he pays us with blessings. But Job proved him wrong. Job showed us that true faith isn't about understanding the plan, it's about trusting the planner. We all face storms. We all face moments when the sky is dark and heaven seems silent. In those moments, we have a choice. We can listen to the voices that say, "Curse God and die," or we can choose to say, "I know that my Redeemer lives." Job lost everything, yet he possessed the one thing that could not be taken away, his connection to God. And in the end, he found that God was enough. Congratulations on finishing the story. Type, "I am a faith keeper" in the comments and show that you stand strong. Thank you for watching. If this story encouraged you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We have many more stories of faith to share with you. Until next time, may you walk in faith and not by sight.